As Pastor said, Exodus chapter 20. Going to be looking at, titled this as the Guidelines for the Mission. Guidelines for the Mission. As you're turning there, in Exodus chapter 20, one of the things that I think helps prove, the question has been brought up is, are these still relevant to today? Are these 10 Commandments still relevant to today? And I think with just by looking at the way that our world is and the fight that is so against them proves how relevant that they are still today. In Exodus chapter 20, we'll start reading. And God spoke these words, saying, I am the Lord thy God, which hath brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself, nor serve them. For I am the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children, unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that take his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day, keep it holy. 6 days thou shalt labor and do all thy work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, nor thy son, or thy daughter, maidservant, manservant, a cattle, or a stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth and the sea and all that is in them, and rested in the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath and hallowed it. Honor thy father and thy mother. Thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. Covet his neighbor's wife, his manservant, his maidservant, his ox, his ass, anything that is in thy neighbor's. And all the people saw the thunderings and the lightnings and the noise of the trumpet and the smoking mountain. And when the people saw it, they removed and stood afar off. They said unto Moses, Speak thou with us, and we will hear, but let not God speak with us, lest we die. Moses said unto the people, Fear not, for God is come to prove you. That is, his fear may be before your faces, that ye sin not. The people stood afar off, and Moses drew near unto the thick darkness where God was. And the Lord said unto Moses, Thou shalt say unto the children of Israel, Ye have seen that I have talked with you from heaven. Ye shall not make with thee gods of silver, neither shall ye make gods of gold, an altar of earth. Thou shalt make unto me. Thou shalt sacrifice there burnt offerings, peace offerings, a sheep and oxen. In all places wherefore I record my name, I will come unto thee, and I will bless thee. If thou wilt make me an altar of stone, thou shalt not build it out of hewn stone. For if thou lift up thy tool upon it, thou hast polluted it. Neither shalt thou go up by the steps unto mine altar, that thy nakedness be not discovered thereon. God help us with the reading of his word. In Exodus chapter number 20, just to do a little bit of review for those that may have missed, or for those that are listening and not sure where we are right now. So this is God who, according to Deuteronomy, this is God. He is speaking, and all of Israel can hear him. Each person can hear God. So up to this point, what has happened is context is king, right? We've got to put everything into its context. And the main reason why is because all of this push on the 10 Commandments within our days, we've lost, there's context that is missing from that, okay? And we're going to look at some of this stuff. So Israel has been trapped in Egypt. God comes along. They've been there for 430 years. God sends the plagues. Pharaoh says, get out of here. They make their way to the Red Sea. Everybody thinks it's over. Everybody thinks it's tragic. You brought us here to kill us. God parts the Red Sea. They cross over. They're singing. They're tickled to death. They're happy. God has slain the rider. He's slain the horse. Everybody's having a great time. And then we take off, right? And we're moving along. And it's what's going through everybody's mind as we looked at the last time that I was up here. I'm walking. I've got my camel. My kids is running around, all this other stuff. We ain't ate in a couple days. Of course I'm going to be upset, right? I mean, how am I supposed to feed these? Kids is crying, got little babies crying. It's chaotic, And we like to think that it was just Moses and maybe 3 folk, right? And that's not how it was at all. It was Moses and millions, right? Millions at this time. And imagine trying to be the person that's over those and trying to lead lead those folks. And Moses was hungry. Moses was thirsty, right? So anyway, so we made it. We've been watered first time, right? Then we get upset because we had no food. Then we get the quail. Then we get remember we seen the manna. The quail was something that according to tradition and the way that things were, that was something that could have been explained. An east wind brought up, and here's these quails. Now, I recognize you can get into the amounts and all this other stuff, and that wasn't, I'm tracking, okay? The thing that we'd never seen before, though, was manna. And remember, we talked about how that God has resources that we don't even know is available, right? And so now we've seen this. Now, you put your feet in their sandals. And I had to ask this question because I wasn't sure. So we're somewhere around 2.5, 3 months since we've come out of Egypt. That's a long time, right? That's a long time. So now we're going up to Mount Horeb. God's coming down. He give these 2 stones to Moses. This 80-year-old guy's carrying these two stones down. And they're hearing him, right? They're hearing this voice. And to the best of my knowledge, and I could be wrong, but to the best of my knowledge, this is the first time that they have heard him individually, to where everybody could hear his voice. Everybody could hear what was going on. And to me, I think that is so key because the rules are given after the relationship has been developed. Now, see, when we have people and they're pushing against the Ten Commandments, they're pushing against it because all they see is restrictions. All they see is I can't do it, I can't do it, and I got to do it, and I got to. Like you don't understand. Okay, you got to put yourself in that. There was a relationship that God developed, that God nurtured, that God proved that He was the provider, that God proved that He could take care of them, that God proved that He could fight His battles. God revealed to them who He was before He ever said anything upon them, right? Which is key. And I'm sure many of us have heard before, rules without relationship equal rebellion. That's so true. That's so true. I was thinking on the way up here, I was like, man, I wonder what it would be. How do I look? I'm wondering what it would be like, what it would have been like if whenever I started dating my wife, and we go out, a couple times and feeling that chemistry. He's like, yeah, man, hey, you want to go out again? Yeah, let's go out again. So we're going out 3 or 4 times, and we're getting ready to walk into the store, and you know how you get, palms is crazy sweaty and stuff. You don't know, trying to wipe them off. Because you get ready to reach, you want to reach out and you just want to grab that hand. You just want to do that. You're like, and what would it have been like if she'd done that to me, if I reached out to her, she'd be like, what, don't you touch me? I'd been like, yeah, no, man, okay, I'm on my way. Yeah, let's go. Sorry, I got to go. We'd got one of them kind of calls. So see, there was no relationship, right? This is why I believe this is very strategic as to why God put this later on, after He had developed that. These commandments or these rules are meant to reveal and not to restrict. Now think about this. Just follow with me. I understand that, I'm tracking, but let's look at this thing from a different perspective, right? Don't that always help whenever you're able to just turn around, you're okay, you're just like, all right, let's just think about this. Let's just see what's going on here, okay? And let's put ourselves not only in Israel's shoes, but also in God's. So they're meant to reveal, and these are just some of the things, you'll read them, you'll get different stuff. These are just some things that stood out to me. So they're meant to reveal and not restrict. They're meant to reveal God's heart, and they're meant to reveal man's heart. So first, how do they reveal God's heart? Now, as I was going through the shop and doing some other things, and I was asking some people, and knew where we was going to be telling us, like, do me a favor. You've heard the 10 Commandments. Yep, heard 10 Commandments. Name me some. You don't have to, not just as many as you can name, just name some, right? For the most part, the first ones that come up was, okay, well, thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not steal. Can't commit adultery. The first ones, and probably for us too, whenever we first think of the 10 Commandments, the ones that we think of are the first ones that are horizontal. Okay, what we're going to see is these can almost be divided up as the first 4 are vertical. It's my relationship with God. And the last 6 is my relationship with man. They're horizontal. Okay, so whenever we begin, so most folks start off with that horizontal view, right? So, okay, so let's start there. That's where that's what starts us off. So let's go there. So if that's true, in 6 through 10, then let's roll over. Let's roll over them. Well, let's start at 5. Honor thy father and mother, that thy days may be long upon the earth, and the land which the Lord thy God hath given. Now, notice also, this is the only one with a promise. So, you gentlemen that are coming in behind me that will be teaching, however this needs to roll with you. You want to get on number 1 and roll with, for sure. For me, this is more of an overview. This is more of a why, and this is more of what I got. Anybody wants to jump in behind that? For sure. Number 6, thou shalt not kill. Number 7, thou shalt not commit adultery. Number 8, thou shalt not steal. Number 9, thou shalt not bear false witness. Number 10, thou shalt not covet. Right? So if we just begin that, okay, now let's look now, immediately when we hear those things, we just think, golly, man, I can't do nothing. Talk about just got to do and can't do, and Lord have mercy, right? But now what if we looked at it from a different perspective? So what if we looked at it from this perspective? What if God was saying, listen, I love you so much that I'm not going to let him mess with you. And I love you so much that I'm not going to let her mess with you. That's what he thinks about us. That's why I feel like it was so much more important that every person in Israel heard this with their ears, because God is saying that to them as individuals. I love you so much, and I've watched you work for your stuff so much. I've watched you work hard. I've watched you till the ground. I've watched you work, drag this camel. And I think so much of you and what you have that I don't want him getting your stuff. And I love him so much, and I've watched all that he's done and all that he's went through, that I'm not going to let you steal his stuff. Right? What if we looked at it from that, instead of they were restricted, they were protecting me? And what would our world look like if it had more of that kind of viewpoint from it? Right? Could you imagine how much different that it would be? Instead of being that, it's meant to protect me. Then when we're talking about these last 6. So moving on. Now keep in mind, as I said, all of Israel heard this from the Lord, and that's in Deuteronomy chapter 4. They were the chosen at the time. They had been chosen out of all of the land, out of all of the world. God stepped down and pulled out a group of people, put his name on them, and pulled them out to speak to them. And they were individual. He gave it to so that they could hear it for themselves. Second, how does this reveal man's heart? Commandments 1 through 4. Now look, if you watch this, verses 1 through 4. Commandments 1 through 4. Starting at verse number 3. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Just stop right there. We can just stop right there. Right? Because what you're going to see if you go on and read, just for sake of time, those first 4 is all about, before any of the other 6 come, those first 4 is like, your priority has to be on me. It's not your job to tell that person that's sitting beside of you what their priority. I got them. Okay, I got them. I'm going to let them know. That's why I think it's so important that every one of them heard it from him in their own ears. because it's your relationship. It's your relationship with God. It has to be personal. You, not your wife, not your husband, not your kids, you are to have no other gods before me. Now, doesn't it just like, what are you talking about, man? What are you talking about, gods? Ain't got no gods. I was talking to a guy about that at work today, and how that I've been watching this show, and there were some people, and you know, some people may have heard this, but the guy was saying that from the simple, and he was trying to draw some logic stuff, and he was like, for the simple reason that God says, you shall have no other gods before me, reveals that there are other gods in this world. I'm like, well, we got to define gods, right? I mean, that's the key word here, so we got to define gods. My understanding of this is when he says you shall have no other gods before me, right? What does that mean? You look at all of them. Excuse me. No other gods. You shall not make any graven images. You shall not take my name in vain, and you have to remember the Sabbath, right? So basically what those are saying is God has placed a God-shaped hole inside of every man. We will worship something, regardless of what it is. We will worship, most of us will worship ourselves. That's how we're inclined to do, right? Is worship ourselves. We will worship something. And whatever it is that you take and you put in front of God, that's what you're worshiping. Now for us, it's not going to look like a little trinket. It's not going to look like something, you know, that we maybe hang from the steering wheel. It's not going to look like a shrine that's built up in the house, you know what I'm saying? For us, it's going to look like probably what's in most folks' pocket, you know, that phone, right? For some, it might be their spouse. For some, it might be their children. It's anything that whenever we think about it, we don't let God into it. And we make that our God. For us, what could that look like today too? Something that I thought about. Is it possible for a God to be a tradition? I think it is. I think it's whenever you say, this is how it's going to be because this is how we've always done it, and we don't try to open up and open our minds and open our hearts and say, what does God say about this? Tell me where in Scripture it says that we have to meet on Sunday at 10:30. I ain't seen it. I ain't seen it nowhere, right? What if we was to change that? What would happen, right? And I listen. I'm not up here advocating for change. I'm just saying, look at it from the other side. Let's just remember, can traditions be your God? What about pain? Could pain be your God? Could pain be something that you're like, no, God, they hurt me, and I'm not going to let it go. I think you can make that case. No other gods. It's any part of your life that you bring up and you say, God, you can't have this. This is mine. I think there's a case that could be made for many of those things. It's personal. It's individual. You ever thought about this? So we have rules everywhere. Rules govern our life everywhere that we go, right? There's speed limits. Most of the time I think they're unfair. You know what I'm saying? I think that's, part of the system to get, so the man can get in my pocket. I think it should be, I think everywhere we go, it should be wise and prudent. Drive at a wise and prudent speed, right? I mean, I feel like that would be great. What about if you're in a homeowners association, right? You got rules. They say you can't have this, you can't park this car out here, you can't have this building. Okay, it's no big deal. Taxes, even the military has what they call codes of conduct, right? And you may find this, unless I'm mistaken, it's been a while since I've been in, but unless they've changed it, in these articles, if a soldier, a Marine, somebody that's in the military, if you commit adultery on your wife or on your husband, you can be charged in a military court. Is that not impressive? How's the military hold it? I mean, how's the military? You know, you have to go back and think, man, whenever this was written, people knew what this done. People knew, you know what I'm saying? So there, even on our jobs, we have job responsibilities, right? You go to some, fill out an application, and they say, here's the responsibilities of your jobs. Most of the time, you accept that. You're okay, you accept the pay. You go in, and it's usually the first day you have orientation. Right? And orientation goes through, here's all your benefits, here's all the rules, here's how these occurrence works, here's your time off, right? You get dropped, everything gets put on you. What about if you're in a group, if you're in a club, right? Don't they have rules? Don't they have expectations? And we don't seem, there's no major pushback on those from anywhere, really, from in society. We don't, what are you talking about? I got to meet every day, or once a month at 7 o'clock for this book club. I ain't trying to be none of that. Well, then don't get in the book club, But and all of these are designed to prevent chaos and disorder, to promote safe environment, and to set known boundaries, right? So why is there such a pushback on these commandments? In my opinion, it's because they reveal man's heart. See, I don't have, I may not like the speed limit, and I may feel like it's, adjustable. But whenever I read the 10 Commandments, there's something, it hits me. Thou shalt have no other gods. Well, what are you talking about? I have no other. I ain't got no other gods. What are you talking about? See, immediately, I go into this deliberation within my mind. Immediately. Thinking, so this reveals man's heart before God. And God is saying, I created you. And I know what is in you. And I know how you're prone to be. And I know that if I don't set these boundaries, that chaos will go crazy. That chaos will ensue. Right? Look at this. I just want to hit this one. Deuteronomy chapter number 4. Verses 10 to 13. It says specifically that day, I think I'm in the wrong place. Hold on just a minute. He shall cleave, behold, I taught you. Yeah, it's Deuteronomy 4, 5 to 8. I'm sorry. Behold, I have taught you statutes and judgments, even as the Lord thy God has commanded that he should do this day to where to possess it. Keep therefore and do them. Listen, so here's the mission. Remember we started this off, guidelines for the mission. So what is the mission? As I read through this is just how I see that this was the mission right here. Keep therefore and do them, for this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nations, which shall bear all these statutes and say, surely this great nation is wise and understanding people. For what nation is there so great who hath God so nigh unto them as the Lord our God, and in all things that we call upon him? He said, listen, I want you to be set apart. I want other people to look in on you and be like, what is going on down there? I want others to look and just like, this is a wise generation. This is an amazing nation. How is it that they have a God that is so close to them? That's what it says. It's like, for who hath God so nigh unto them? For them, it was strange. For all these other nations, their gods was abstract. Their gods was out. Their gods couldn't be touched. Their gods couldn't be seen. They couldn't be heard from. And God is like, if you'll do what I say, I will rise you up so that everybody looks at you and like, what? What is this? In chapter 7, he breaks it down a little bit more. In chapter 7, starting in verse number 12. Wherefore, and this is the blessings that come with this obedience. Not only am I going to raise you up, not only am I going to put you on top of a hill and other people are going to look in and just be in awe of you. Wherefore it shall come, in verse number 12, wherefore it shall come to pass, if you hearken to these judgments and keep and do them, that the Lord thy God shall keep unto thee the covenant and the mercy which he swore to the fathers. And he will love thee and bless thee and multiply thee. It goes crazy. It just goes on from here. He will also bless the fruit of thy womb, the fruit of thy land, thy corn, thy wine, thine oil, the increase of thine kind, the flocks of thy sheep, and the lands which he swore unto the fathers. He shall bless above all people. There shall not be a male or female barren among you or among your cattle. All of these things. He says, just look, he's like, all you got to do is what I asked you to do. That's all you got to do. Because I know your heart. I know how you're prone. I know how you're drawn. I know what it is. And I'm just letting you know I love you so much that I want to protect you from him. And I know where you're drawn to. And if you'll do these things, you're really going to get what you want. Because I'm going to lift you up. And I'm going to have all these nations look up to you just like, what in the world? Whose God does that? You're like, glad you asked. My God does that. This is what my God does do. My God doesn't say I have to bow 3 times. My God says it's personal. My God says that I can come to him anytime. Anytime. Had the wonderful privilege walking up to a lady at work the other day. And she was just in an area where I had got to get through in a few weeks. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to go by and see her. And I'll go by and she's over here working. And when she lifts her head up, tears are coming down her face. I said, oh, Lord. I said, are you okay? And she just goes, and it's something about work. Something about work's just got her all tied up, right? I'm like, are you okay? She's like, no. It's like, well, listen. And I said, we're going to pray about this right now. I ain't got to wait until Wednesday night prayer meeting service. I ain't got to wait until Sunday. And I'm not going to tell you that I'm going to pray for you or not. Let's get this settled right here, right now. And I had the wonderful privilege of being able to pray for that woman. And like I say, I did. And I told her that too. I was like, listen, you know I ain't been by here in a couple weeks. Just my schedule has not let me come by here. And I said, and this is how I come up. Because usually I see her anytime. And she's just happy. She, you know what I'm saying? Hey, big cut. And I said, this was divine. I was supposed to come by here. And we ain't going to waste this moment. Let's pray right now. So we did. And it was fantastic, right? And I would and immediately the first thing I do is I was like, God, thank you that I can come to you at any time. I ain't got to be at an altar. I ain't got to be here. I have just had come through. I didn't have to go through and wash my hands and make sure that I was all clean. I can come to you right now. That's my God. That's the one who says, that's the one who brings these things and says, yes, and I love you so much that I want to protect you from you. Who else can say, you can't even think about thinking about? Because that's what Jesus said. He goes over in Matthew chapter 5, and he's like, listen, I know that you've heard that you shall not murder. Because that's really the word whenever we get to it, and there may be others, but when it says thou shalt not kill, that's not because if it's just thou kill, you can go back and be like, well, didn't you just kill a whole bunch of Egyptians in the sea? Didn't you just do that? So it's not that. It's murder, right? So he says, you've heard it said you ain't supposed to murder. But I'm telling you right now, if you got anger in your heart towards your brother, that's murder. And you're like, man, alive. He even breaks them down. He interprets them for himself. He says, I know you heard that you shall not commit adultery. But let me tell you this. You think about somebody other than your husband or wife the wrong way, you did it. That's in your heart. And we're like, golly, man, for real? I wasn't trying to think that. It just come in, you know? I don't need, you know? And I heard, and we may have heard this, I may have said it before, you know, we can't keep the birds from flying over our hair or over our head. But we can keep them from building a nest in our hair, right? There's some thoughts that come through and you're like, man, where in the world? Lord God, I'm trying to drive down the road. I'm speeding and I'm wondering if that was a cop and now this is, you know, in my head. And they're like, stop. You just stop that. God says, I know what's in your heart. And we're like, well, how can you, I wasn't trying to have that thought. So how can you hold that against me? And how does all this work? And how are you going to say, like James says, that if you're found guilty of one, then you're guilty of all? He's like, man, this don't make no sense. Imagine, if you would, imagine that you have a pie chart, right? And on that pie chart, it's broke down, and you got 10 commandments in every piece of that pie. Right? And I hand you a rock and I say, break number 3 and number 3 only. It's not going to happen. When you break it, you break them all. You break one, you're guilty of them all. That's what he's saying. That's while the immediate reaction is to push back from that, if we could recognize that God does these things from a position of love, and he does these things like, listen, I just want you to know, and I just want you to acknowledge and see who you are. Because when you recognize and you see who you are and what is in your heart, then you'll see who I am. And you'll recognize that I also know that, but I still want you. I still love you. I still want to hear from you. I still want to bless you. I still want to raise you up. I want your neighbors to look on and be like, what in the world is going on over at that house? I ain't seen that brother put any fertilizer out. I ain't seen him put no lime, and that's the greenest grass I've ever seen in my life. Brother got to cut it 3 times a day, and I don't know what's going on over there. You know? And I want there to be some things that provoke people to come over and be like, man, what are you doing? It's like, I know you ain't going to believe this. But I just love God. And I just try to serve him. And this is what he does. And what's crazy is he knows that I like green grass. He knows that I want to have a nice yard. But I ain't trying to put $10,000 in my yard. So the Lord just gives me nice grass. You know what I'm saying? And that's how you roll with it. And you acknowledge it before him. That's all he's wanting to do. He's wanting to have it to provoke people to come to you and be like, how are you going through that? How is that happening? How are you so blessed? How do you have this rig and it's got 6 million miles on it and it ain't broke down? I bought one new off the lot, made it across the double yellow lines and it falls apart. What is happening? And it's all for that. It's all for that to bring us so that we'll show others him. Man, that's something that whenever we get a hold of. And let me tell you, it's something that I'm getting more and more, like within about the last year and a half. There's so many things, man, where God has just been setting them in front of me, setting me in front of me, setting me in front of me, setting me in front of me. And finally you're just like, okay. Clearly I didn't have it. Clearly my way was the wrong way. And now you're telling me because I'm having to face this test, the same kind of issues, same kind of thing. Not only am I facing it here, but I'm having to face it there and in other places. And I've noticed this. And every time I turn on the radio, there's a song that hits it, or there's some preaching that hits it, or somebody at work mentions, and I'm like, okay, man, I got it, tracking. So now, how do I fix it, God? Thank you for showing me. Because if you show me, then you want to do something in me. And you're wanting to change me. And you're wanting to make me better. And you're wanting to use me. You want to bring me out of my comfort zone. And step out of that comfort zone. That's what he's doing right here. Every time he knows, every time when they hear this, there's something that hit her, and there's something that hit him. There's something that hit her, and there's something that hit him. And he's drawing them out because it's meant for that self-examination. It's meant for that that introspection. It's meant for those times for you to step back and be like, okay, let me think about this, God. Let me think. Do I have any other gods? Do I have any images? What have I got that I'm putting in front of you, God? I mean, as far as the letter of the law, according to the state of North Carolina, I ain't killed nobody. But have I done it in my heart? Is there that person where I'm like, boy, to God, I'd love to see the wheels fall off of everything you have? Is that genuinely, in my heart? I mean, is it possible for me to not walk through Walmart and look on every woman and look on every man and have that a desire? Is that, Lord, if that's, hey, God, you've hit me, okay, so now help me. And see, that's too, I know we're kind of always coming, but that's the difference between condemnation and that conviction. Because condemnation is always said, look at how nasty you are. Look at how trashy you are. Look at what, God ain't going to have nothing to do with you. You say you do this. You say you do that. You're trying to say this. You try reading. And look at what you just did. Look at all, you got to be kidding me. You think God wants to hear from you? It's always meant to separate and to push away. When God comes in and he's like, hey man, Need you to step back on this. I need you to evaluate this in your life. Because it's causing some friction between me and you. And I want me and you together. I want us to be together. That conviction is always like, God, it comes upon you and you're like, God, man, you're right. I'm sorry, man. And I got to get this squared away. Because I know that you love me and I want to be closer to you just like you want to be closer to me. And you get hit with these things, man. When these commandments come up and they strike you, whatever. And you think about it. How is it coming upon me? Is it God saying, I want to correct this so that we can be closer? Or is it the devil saying, no, you ain't got it. You can't talk to him. He ain't going to listen to you. He says, shut your mouth, devil. I'm going to him right now. And you can't stop me. Mission, God to raise them up and to show them, to make them real, to make them known, to make them different. It has been said that every problem is a communication problem. Hey, think about that. Well, there's a lot of truth in that, ain't there? Right? You get in the car, check engine light comes up on the dash. That check engine light is not the problem. There's a communication problem somewhere, and that's why the check engine light comes on. Right? Every problem is a communication problem. You think about it whenever you're at work, new person shows up, right? You train them how to do this, and you're kind of getting to know them and everything, and you get to know them for a few weeks or months or whatever, and you know how it is. You kind of start relaxing, doing things, and making little jabs or saying, you know what I'm saying? Just little stuff, man, just messing with folks or whatever. And then you start feeling that pushback, or somebody says something, oh man, you know, right? And then eventually it gets to that point where you're like, listen, you ain't going to say that no more. You ain't going to, you know, they turn it. You know why? Because there's a communication problem. Because somewhere down the line, whenever that first happened, nobody said nothing. They didn't feel safe or whatever to be like, hey man, this is really, you know, this is a topic that I'd really rather not. Listen, I know you're just picking, and I get it, man. I understand that but for me, here's my line. I'd really rather you didn't cross it, right? Communication problem. So God says, with this right here, with these statutes and with these judgments, He says, there ain't going to be no communication problem with me. I'm letting you know. Here's what I expect. Here's what I know about you. Guidelines for the mission. They're meant to reveal and not restrict. They show God's hearts toward us and our hearts toward each other and towards Him. Amen, Pastor. Thank you, sir.